Oh, hello. I wanted to do a little discussion video about critics and my idea that basically all readers are critics. Um, this probably comes out of a thing of a variety of pressures. Because, like, I mean, I think you have some authors that are like, look, yeah, you have your opinions on books. That's great. Maybe I'm somebody who can read them and, like, I can shrug it off, or I can take stuff that okay, that's useful. I mean, I think a lot of writers are definitely coming from a standpoint of, look, I need to kind of write for myself. I need to react. I mean, I think you definitely get, there's varying kinds of writers. There's writers who are like, oh, I tried this, and they're more commercially minded, like, oh, I tried this, nobody was interested, no sales, but then I tried this, and oh, I got sales, so I'll do that. And I mean, that's that, so there's that. There's also kind of, people who are much more, look, I'm doing this for my own internal reasons. I'm going to write it, it's going to get out there, and whatever your reaction to it is, that's great. But, like, I want to communicate that effectively, and I want to improve on my craft and stuff like that. But there is also definitely a strong strain of both from writers and from other readers of, why do people have to be negative Nellies? Why do people have to pick things apart? Why do people have to not so, why don't people support their writers? There's a lot of things of, like, writers are like, there's a strong contingent of writers are like, look, Amazon sales, all those star ratings, they're important to me. If you bought the book, give me 5 stars, give me 5 stars. Uh, you know, that sort of thing, where, that, and it has an economic impact to them, and so they're not that thrilled when you get readers or critics who say, well, I enjoyed the book, but there was this and this and that, and going on the scale, I will say, I'm going to give it a 3 stars. It was a good book, but it wasn't a great book. It wasn't a 5 star book. That, and that goes into the whole thing of the meaningless of the star system. In some ways, the star system is just a thumbs up and thumbs down, and thumbs up is 5 stars, and everything else lower is seems to be thumbs down, is going to hurt the author and will dissuade other people from reading if it's not a 5 star book. As if there's honestly that many 5 star books in anybody's library, in anybody's heart, of, like, if you love everything that much, wow, that's amazing, and I hats off to you. I think for a lot of us, there's the sort of, like, there's the bell curve. There's going to be some stuff that's negative. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's pretty much average. That's, yeah, that's a lot of books are pretty good, solid books, enjoyable books, not earth-shaking books. And then there's going to be a very small category of books which are like, wow, that's a book I think about years later that still chokes me up when I think about it. Those kind of categories. And yeah, maybe some people will have more negative books because they're more, they more things rub them the wrong way. And but I have has a tendency to think out. So I just want to talk about that. I think all readers are critics. That in the face of people saying, why can't just be positive? It's like, I think positivity is a part of criticism, but I also think that the negative or weighing things is also a part of it. Maybe I'll start off just with definitions. Yeah, I've got two. There's Merriam-Webster definition of critic. It's like, one, someone who engages often professionally in the analysis, valuation, or appreciation of works of art or artistic performances. One who expresses a reasoned opinion on any matter, especially involving the judgment of its value, truth, righteousness, beauty, or technique. And there's also the thing of, one given to harsh or capricious judgment. And it's funny because there's like someone who's evaluating stuff as a critic, but also someone who's being harsh and capricious, and that does seem to be the two views of, one person's measured and one person's measured analysis and evaluation of the stuff can sometimes be another person's harsh and capricious judgment. And I think we've all read reviews where it seems like someone who is writing to stir up things. But that then you're trying to look into the heart of a critic and say like, oh, they're doing this to be mean, where they might say, no, this is my genuine reaction to this book. And I mean, I've had books where it's really triggered me. It's really gotten me riled up, and I've been it's made me angry, and I'm sure somebody would look at that and say, oh, you're just being harsh, capriciously, harsh about that. You're just trying to make for clicks, where I would say, no, that's my genuine reaction to that book and why I hated it so much. The Oxford Dictionary's got a person who expresses opinion. Now, this one actually is interesting because it pulls out the professionally and says a person who expresses opinions about the good and bad qualities of books, music, etc. Which is something to be said. Like when I say a reader, in some ways I'm saying anyone who's taking in any kind of art, whether that's a book, a movie, a play, visual, those visual arts, painting, sculpture, music, all that. Those are all sorts of types of readers in my thing. And number 2 is a person who expresses disapproval of someone or something and talks about their bad qualities, especially publicly, which I think, is getting back more into, that is also a thing of like, there's the work and then there's the author. And it's how much you can separate the two. I do try in my criticism to separate, like when I say I don't like this book, that doesn't mean I don't like this author. I know nothing about this author. At least there's very few authors that I actually know personally, and I probably wouldn't actually criticize their book because that would my personal relationship with them would get in the way of me actually thinking critically about their book, probably being too kind to a fault, or just being too hesitant to point out things that I found negative about the book. And I wouldn't be believable in my positive things, and I would damage my relationship with an author, a personal relationship with an author, if I talked about it the other way. But there's some people who definitely conflate author and work and say, if you've written a book where there's a sexist rapist in it, well then that author is obviously a sexist rapist, which that might be a little bit when you confuse the work for the author, which is tough because there's some books like that's a extreme ad hominem. That's an extreme straw man thing, but saying, ignore all my terms, that's an extreme version of what I'm saying. But oftentimes, an author might depict a character who's got certain beliefs, but that might not be their own beliefs. They're creating a character. And at the same time, sometimes things seem to be so autobiographical that the authors, I know Steve Donahue has talked about how some books are critic proof because you can't criticize this book because this book is all auto fiction, and you can't separate the two. So if you criticize the book for stuff, you are criticizing the person, which is it's one of those tricky things, and especially for a professional reviewer, I can see that as being difficult. So, there's that thing again of critical. What does critical mean? This is also from the Oxford Dictionary. It's expressing disapproval of someone or something and saying what you think is bad about them. So yeah, again, that's like the author and the work. And I mean, it's tough in criticism when you're critical about a work, because you will have, if you're a professional reviewer, if you're someone who's influential, if you say you do not like this work, it can have consequences on the career of the author. So it does have an impact on them, but I think the most kind of hopefully ethical critics are the ones who are going to, when they express something, and saying, I'm saying about this work that I don't think it works for these particular reasons and stuff like that. But there's also, the thing of critical thinking, of involving making fair, careful judgments about the good and bad qualities of someone or something. And it's making fair, careful judgments about the good and bad qualities of in my case, when I'm talking about a book, it's like I'm talking about reviewing the book. Like, I do not like to actually know too much about the authors that I read. This is not something I'm going to be privy to. I don't, you know, I can't tell if this is a fantasy, built up by a publicist to sell the book or not. What I have that is actually concrete are those words that are in this book itself. And I mean, there's context outside of that, but I'm sort of careful, because in the end of the day, what I have really is this book is the book. It's not like it's quite like it's not quite the death of the author, which is the idea that you should only, I don't know. I think I do lean much more onto the thing of all I have is this book. I may have some research around the book. Some authors are going to be more forthcoming with a biography than others. Others, it's going to be simply, they lived from this time to this time, and then they died. I mean, Shakespeare is an Englishman who lived this time, born this time, and did he write his things? We don't know. In some ways, in that case, I don't care. I don't care, because we've got all the plays, and that's what I'm going to react to. So I think it comes down to the fact that, writers write to express something, to communicate with the reader. If it was something that they didn't want to share with others, you wouldn't write it down, you wouldn't publish it, you wouldn't make efforts to make it understandable to other human beings. The act of reading is the act of, people read to get something out, to have a response to whatever work that is, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And I think that's what the author is going for. They want to get a response. But, other than simple, we clap, like in a play, you clap or you boo, or you're dead silent. What is expected? What do you expect? The expression of the response from a reader is going to be a judgment about that work. Whether that is, good or bad or mixed or indifference. And it's objective. Maybe if it's a work of a nonfiction, like, well, they got this fact wrong, that guy wasn't born on that date, or objective in the sense of, wow, this was poorly edited, and but there's also subjective of, like, oh, I love the sentence fragments in here, versus, oh, that always rubs me the wrong way, or all those different things are the response, the personal response of each individual reader to the work. And I would argue that everybody's response is a critical response, and that goes from somebody who just, I read books, and it's like, I don't really. People say, oh, I don't stop and think about the book afterwards, but it's like, well, did you buy any more books by that author? And it's like, oh yeah, I bought everything else of theirs, or no, that was the only one I read. That's a critical response, and boy, that has a direct impact on the pocketbook of the author. That probably determines in kind of our economic system whether that author is going to get published again, whether there's going to be more things. If everybody says, we read the first one and that was it, even if they don't make a critical response to it, that is the strongest critical response that is going to happen. Or you put the book down halfway through and just never thought about it again. That's a thing, to the point where, the other extremes of, like, you shout the praise of this book everywhere, you go everywhere, you tell all your friends, you post a review on YouTube, you do all that stuff, or you hate that book so much and you tell your friends how much you hated this book, and you post a detailed response on YouTube about, like, each and every point that you did not like about that. I mean, it definitely goes with the thing of the absence of a response is a response, and it's probably the most damning kind of response, because it just drops with a thud and nobody ever hears about this book. Um, that's probably the worst kind of response. I mean, in some ways, if a book is so hated that everyone's talking about it, that can be an attractor. That can be an attractor, and you can attract as many people who go, oh, actually, I do like that, or oh, that Jay, he never knows what he's talking about. I'm going to go check that book out because he listed all the stuff he doesn't like, and this is stuff I do like about it. So yeah, and I mean, I think, obviously writers get irked by professional or large reviewers, influential reviewers, when they don't like their book, and it's like it affects their sales. And I cannot fault writers for having put like years and years into a thing, and somebody comes out with a review and dislikes it, and whether those reasons are valid or not, that has to hurt. It's like you're taking the chance by putting out a work, and in the end of the day, if it doesn't go over, that's terrible. I mean, I still would argue it's better to get a response than to get ignored. But it's definitely it can be a part of the process that writers really seem to dislike. I mean, I know that from the small forays I've done into writing myself, that has been the toughest thing. Getting negative or positive just was torture to me, and I couldn't take it. So I definitely bowed out of that. So my hats are always off to writers when they put out stuff, and they're able to, with a certain amount of dignity, kind of withstand the slings and arrows of whatever comes towards them. And the more popular you are, the more negative stuff is going to come up. It may be just that small percentage because you're actually overall successful. But if you sell 100,000 books, well, then there's still going to be there'll be a sizable hunk of people who are not going to like your book, and of those there'll be some quite vocal ones, as well as a lot of people who love your book and will be talking it up. But if you're a certain kind of writer, you'll focus on the negative, and it'll bug at you. But it seems at the end of the day, that's got to be a part of the contract of the kind of the communication you're entering into by saying, I'm going to write something and give it to other people, is that you're going to get response, and not all that response is going to be positive response, and all that response is going to be welcome. And maybe, it can be wrong. There's, and just this thing of, in our modern era with like Goodreads and Amazon, where everybody can be a critic. Everyone can just kind of rate the book. And I mean, a lot of people are not interested in doing half an hour long diatribes on their books, whether they love them or hate them, but we'll just do a star thing because they're busy people, and it's just like, it was good, and they give it 5, or it was okay, and give it 3, which I still think doesn't make any sense, or I hated this and give it 1 star. And in the aggregate, that is giving you a reflection of what your readers thought of your book, and that can really burn, and it can make writers kind of push to make everything 5 stars, because they all want to succeed. When unfortunately that's not how it works. Majority of authors fail. Even authors that, like, everyone loved their book, can still fail because not enough, that all the people who read it aren't big enough of a thing, and the publisher's like, yeah, it's not big enough of a market, we're not gonna do it. So there's that. So yes, my heart goes out to writers, but I do think that the most that writing the book is okay. We'll give you is 75% of the proposition, but the other 25%. No, I can't. I have to say it's like 50% is writing the book, but the other 50% is finding people to read it, and that might even be larger. I might be being kind and humble here, but writers don't exist without readers. Yeah. yeah, writers don't exist without readers. If no one's reading your work, then your work disappears and it's gone. Whereas the works that hold on to readers and people go back to and are always responding and are always talking about it critically, that everything is critical, by the way. It's like whether you loved it or you hated it, those are both that's critical. It's like you need that to exist. You need that to exist, or else it's just squiggles on a page that's rotting somewhere. And is that actually is that a living word anymore? I'd argue no. I argue no. Now I want to start off. I want to end off with the idea that I think writers are critics too. And I guess all writers are readers to some extent. You've had to learn how to use the English or whatever language you've had to learn how to use language, and probably the main way of learning how to use language is to actually read it, and then to try and imitate or make your own version of that. And I think that's a part of it, is making your own version. I think we built up there's through reading you enter into a tradition of writing. You learn different things, and I mean that's the thing is I think it's been argued that it's influence, that the writers of the last generation are what the writers of this generation have read and are reacting to, whether they are imitating, whether they are emulating, whether they're saying no, this sucks and I'm going to do something completely different, but as a reaction to what I have read. It's a criticism. It's a form of criticism of I'm taking the stuff that I loved and I'm kind of emulating that. I'm taking the stuff I hated and I'm reacting against that. I think of Philip Pullman is his Golden Northern Lights series, which is a very direct response, a direct criticism to the fantasy world of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. That is a book of criticism, if I've ever seen one. That is 3 volumes of fictional criticism against the work that the Narnia novels, and that's pretty brutal stuff. That's pretty brutal stuff. I would end with the fact that I think that writers are critics as well, that the very act of writing in some ways is a response to the reading that's come before them. That's perhaps that's the best, the greatest revenge a writer can have, is to say that their criticism has got a much better chance of living on than works that are just solely pieces about other a critical essay on C.S. Lewis is probably has much less of a chance of living on than Philip Pullman's fictional response to Narnia has of living on. So yeah. So those are my thoughts. All readers are critics. All writers are critics. Criticism is reading. Criticism is writing. One big melange there, I guess. All right. I will leave it there. That was a very long discussion video that, yes, we can now send out into the ether to disappear. More videos later.